Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's incredible session. We've got the incredible Kirsty Jarvis from Luminous PR with us today to talk you through some incredible PR strategies to kind of leverage around and impress investors and make sure you've got everything you need to succeed. So really looking forward to hearing what Kirsty has to say. It's going to be a short talk and then a Q&A at the end. So you'll be able to ask any questions you have about how you can leverage PR for your investment round. I'll leave Kirsty to do her own introduction. She'll do it so much better than me. But Luminous we've known for years. They are so good at what they do, and they've got a great track record. So I'm so thrilled to have them with us. For those of you who have turned up and maybe are like, who are you? Why are we here? So just a quick introduction to myself. I'm James Church. I'm the author of a best-selling book called Investable Entrepreneur. You can probably see it up there. I'm also the co-founder at Robot Mascot. So Robot Mascot, for those of you that don't know, we're an investment readiness agency. We're here to help support founders build a narrative for investors that will help them convince them to back their business. Our clients are super successful. They're 40 times more likely to raise. We've raised more than 200 million to date. We're trusted by top tier VCs, global accelerators, national accelerators in NatWest and Barclays, and many more besides. So we've got a great reputation, but we're not here to talk about me today. But if you are thinking of raising investment, you haven't come across us before, this is your first engagement with us. I do run regular fundraising strategy sessions, a bit like this on Zoom every week. I'll drop a link in the comment at some point today. So if you do want to book onto one of those, there are a 90-minute group session, and we'll go through a full strategy for how you can raise funding to launch, scale, and grow your business. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Kirsty, who's going to take it away, give herself an introduction, and give you some incredible insights for your fundraising journey. So, Kirsty, over to you. You will need to unmute yourself. Sorry, I've accidentally muted you. There you
That's okay. Thank you. It's probably for the best. I was thinking about in the background. Hi, everybody. It's really, really nice to be here. And thank you, James and Robot Mascot guys, for inviting us in. Let me just share my screen with you guys, and then hopefully this will work. I'm going to be full screen. Okay. Hopefully that's all good. Please do let me know in the chat if there's any issues with seeing this. I'm just going to minimize the little video as well at the top. Great. So as James said, my name is Kirsty Jarvis, and I am founder and CEO of Luminous PR. Luminous is now 12 years old, just actually last week. It was our birthday, so happy birthday to Luminous. I can't quite believe it's been 12 years, but rather like yourselves, I am a founder. But I've just put a few little stats up here on some of the things that I think is important and relevant for you actually on kind of my credibility, because we are going to be talking about building credibility today. And so, yeah, I've had 20 years of working with tech businesses, tech and digital businesses, I would say. Crucially for you, 15 years of working with startups, and that's kind of all shapes and sizes. So pre-seed, seed, and then up to, I've got 3 unicorn clients that we've worked with, which has been really amazing. Quite a very different journey from working with the really early stage startups. And also I do a lot of mentoring with both founders and startup groups through accelerator programs and growth programs. And my ethos really is that PR, I think, gets seen as a little bit of a dark art, and there's a lot of misunderstanding about what it is and what it can help you achieve. And it typically gets deployed right at the kind of end bit of the investment journey when you're ready to kind of go to launch. And actually, one of the things that I'm really quite passionate about is working with people to kind of help them understand PR early on, so that they're making the right budgetary decisions, they're making the right kind of decisions in terms of when is best to deploy, and also what's possible and what kind of the expectations are. So that's just a little bit about me. I look forward to meeting you. Please do connect with me that's my little QR code from LinkedIn. So if you do want to connect with me, I'm happy to answer any questions. We've got some Q&A time at the end, but also I'm always on LinkedIn if you've got any specific questions, or I spark any kind of inspiration or thought in you. So anyway, so we are here today to talk about how to use your founder's voice as part of the investor journey. And I think this is kind of really crucial at the moment, because ultimately I think we can all agree that the investment environment is quite a tough one to navigate at the moment. It's definitely a very crowded marketplace, a bit like this picture, and quite uncertain. You never know whether you're up or down with some of the conversations that you're having, and also it's super competitive. So it's really hard to think about, like, when you're putting your pitch deck together or your pitch emails and those sorts of things. How do you look at cutting through, and what can you do from a kind of proactive sense, to really help those investors sort of take notice of you, I would say, and understand that you are the person for them to give your time to over someone else. Um, and I think, just a little bit more about the landscape at the moment. We're hearing from investors that, it's definitely taking longer to raise. So they've got more time to deliberate you, and to make their decisions on whether you are the right kind of investment. And they are super cautious because of the environment that we're currently in at the moment, with regards to, what's going on in the world, and, economies, and the political side of things as well. So the one thing that we do know, though, it doesn't really matter like how long it takes you to raise, or your kind of validation, but they investors are looking for people that they feel that they've got confidence in. And I think that is the same whether you're looking to raise your first 500,000, or whether you're looking at raising the really, really kind of big money down the line. They need to feel confident in the team. And yes, part of that is the face-to-face that they have with you, but also that we can't forget that they are doing their due diligence all the way through the process. So, it's really, really true to say that, investors are funding people as much as they are funding the product. So part of this session really is to try and get you to think a little bit differently about how you're using your founder's voice, as part of that journey, knowing that you're going to be researched, and like understanding and kind of really having an audit on what you're putting out in the world. Are you giving the best show? And thinking about it, if they looked you up today, what would they find about you? So you probably know this already through the work that you're doing with Robot Mascot, or from what you've read. But investors are doing they're looking at hundreds of pitches. You have to stand out. But when they're researching you as the founder, it's the impression that you're giving of yourself out in the outside world, not only on that kind of initial email pitch, but if they're going and Googling your name, or looking at the brand that you're setting up, or the business that you're working on. What are you portraying to the outside world? And the work that I'm starting to do more and more with founders now is how they can use their voice as a kind of strategic lever as part of this fundraising. So this is something that works outside of the brand comm strategy, because actually your brand marketing strategy is about closing customers and attracting new partners and people that will help you with that growth. But actually, you as a founder have some very specific credibility touch points that you have to hit on. So really thinking about, like, what is that show that you're putting out there to the investors? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So just thinking about, if an investor did Google you, what would they find? I think, we've all done that. But actually, one of the things that I think is always really helpful to think about when you're looking at starting to put any kind of voice strategy together is putting yourself in the mindset of that particular, the audience that you really want to attract. And this is true for investors, but it's also true for your customers at the end of the day. What are those things that you would really, if you were looking in a mirror and wanting to hire that person, or wanting to work with that person, or ultimately having someone investing in you, or you investing in someone else, what are those credibility touch points that actually would really matter to them? So I've listed a few of those out here, but actually for your business there may be more than these. But who are you getting traction with? For example, are you an authority? Are you credible? Who's in your network? Who's endorsing you? All of these things are sorry, was someone going to ask a question?
Well, you're on mute, Kirsty.
Okay. Sorry. Can you hear me? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so looking at all of those questions and those touch points for like putting yourself in the mindset of the person that you really want to be attracting. And remember, you should not be doing a kind of blanket email out to all and sundry investors. Actually, you should be really looking at picking your investors and understanding the ones that are like really aligned to you. What matters to them? What is it that like would really resonate with them? It is about the money. It is about your potential to return to them some, their investment with obviously interest on top. But ultimately, if they are, sorry, just give me 1 second, guys. Apologies. You just love those brilliantly timed deliveries when you're at home. Um, so it's kind of just thinking about putting yourself in the mindset of what's happening, and is really going to make those investors. So if you've got a particular type of investor with a particular type of specialism, or you've done your due diligence and you know the kind of companies that they typically like to work with, or the kind of founder traits, then these are the things that you should be putting into, some of that communication strategy that you're putting out into the world. So I did want to just talk a little bit about, why is it that founders are not doing as much of this? Because my viewpoint is that actually I think founders that I speak to really do want to do as much as they possibly can to help their business move forward. But the challenge is they're wearing so many hats, and they've got so many calls on their time. And I think we've all heard the term personal branding, I think, at the moment. And what I'm tending to find from founders is when I mention to them, you've got to really think about what you, as a particular branded person or someone that's going to be driving this business forward, is, how you're portraying yourself as being a capable leader, a capable custodian of investment. And what we find is that, the term personal brand is kind of creating a little bit of an ick. There's kind of ick moments where, and I think we've all seen it, on LinkedIn or in various different social channels where, there's those kind of posts that you can't really see the purpose of them. There's very loud people that are talking, they might be posting 2 or 3 times a day. I don't know where they get the time from to do these things, because as I said, I'm a founder as well, and I really struggle to do these things. But ultimately, a very high percentage of founders, I think, don't do enough. And the trend is, right at the beginning, when you're early stage startup, you'll be hustling hard, you'll be out there, you are the brand ultimately right at the beginning. But as you tend to grow, the founding team tends to get quieter and quieter. And I do think that this is, obviously there is a number of factors around time, but it's also like it's inspiration. It's like not really knowing what to say. But my appeal to you, I think this afternoon really, is to start thinking, moving away from the kind of the personal brand icky, feelings that kind of come from that sort of connotations of being an influencer. And, ultimately, it's about raising your profile for a little bit of vanity, little bit of maybe I want to get some speaking opportunities, etc. This, and sort of moving it away from being an influencer mindset to impact mindset. So something that, it should be completely aligned to your personal business goals. What do you need as a founder to happen with your business in the next month to 3 months? And how do you set some sort of communication strategy that aligns to those particular goals? And what could you do to help move that a little bit further forward? So yeah, I think it's just trying to encourage people to shift that mindset a little bit. And what I tend to find is when you kind of say, like, well, you're not doing this for your own personal gain, you're doing this for the growth of your business. Actually, founders then start to resonate a little bit more and say, yeah, okay, I'm going to start to think a little bit more tactically about this. I think obviously, you've got to look at the founder voice as part of a bigger picture. Any founder voice strategy, it doesn't matter how loud you are, how smart you come across in the market, ultimately, nothing's really going to replace that kind of really strong pitch deck that you have, and that kind of pitch approach. You've got to still have that market opportunity. The business model's got to be sound. You've got to work out, like, where are you going to get your traction from. You've got to have a good team, all of those sorts of things. But one of the things, like the same principles that you would put into your pitch deck and the things that you have to evidence, you can actually use those things in building out your founder voice strategy. So, for example, what could you say if you're starting the process of trying to attract some investors, or to reach out to some investors? What could you put on your personal channel that might talk about kind of the market opportunity for investment in what you're doing? How could you talk about, you've just brought on a really amazing person on your team that is going to do something, has come with a great amount of experience and a brilliant black book. You could also think about, if you're in the middle of investment conversations and perhaps the investor might have said something to you that, we're a little bit nervous about this bit of your business, what could you actively go and do that helps to sort of publicly put that mind at rest? So, for example, we've had founders before where they've been really close to closing their investment, but there's been some nervousness about the technology. So going and making a lot of noise about building out a really credible and brilliant technology team, and then using your technology team as part of your content strategy to sort of put those messages out there, can really kind of help put the mind at rest at that point. So it's part of a bigger puzzle, really. You shouldn't think of it as separate. It's kind of all part of the moving things forward in the same direction. So, as I said, like, where to start? I mean, typically inspiration of what to say. So, whenever I bring up to our clients, we think you're doing a brilliant job on the brand side of things. But you as a founder is probably a little bit too quiet for what's happening. The typical thing is, I just don't even know where to start. I've got a million and one things on my brain. I haven't got enough time. And honestly, like, I can't see it as being the sort of priority that it needs to be. So one of the things that I wanted to do with you just this afternoon is to try and give you some sort of places to start, really, and how to be a little bit more efficient, because we all know that there's so many different places where a founder is required to be, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's doing some PR, whether you're speaking, whether you have to be in sales meetings. So it's about kind of setting a strategy for yourself. And again, it's got to be separate, I think, to the brand strategy, because you as a founder will need to demonstrate different things that won't necessarily matter to your end customer. The challenge also with this is that, when you're early stage, really, really early stage, you might not have a marketing support team. You might not have someone, even, you may not have an intern right at the beginning. And, it's really difficult to find that time if you don't have it. But what I would say is, start with working with an advisor or someone that you trust that can kind of give you that extra brain power. So talk to them about the goals that you have for the business. It might be that I need to raise, or I'm really worried about this thing that's coming down the line, and I think it's going to impact how investors see me, or I think this could, send the wrong kind of signal. Work with someone that can kind of help you brainstorm those, that's sort of the starting point for what to say, and plan ahead. So if you've only got an hour a week, then try and plan the next 2 or 3 weeks, ideas or content that you can put out there. If you don't have the team and it is on you, you've got to be really efficient with your time. So be really realistic about where you can put the time and where is the right places to be. And often, I think this is a good practice to get into anyway, because even if you do have a team, often founders may have some worries behind the scenes about, with regards to the investment journey that they may not want to share with their team. So perhaps you might be running out of road. And that's not an easy conversation to have with someone on the marketing team if they're not part of the senior team. So again, having that advisor that you can work with, often most founders will have people that they kind of sense check things with, and also find someone that kind of knows what they're doing with comms that can kind of give you those kind of good ideas. So we said right at the beginning, kind of starting to think about your audience. Well, here's just a few kind of founder traits that VCs will be kind of really valuing. And these sources actually came from the VC Factory and Going VC. They wrote a really good report actually fairly recently about how VCs are kind of decision making ultimately. So I've just listed a few of these things out for you. But if you look at them, you can kind of see, when you look at ability, it's that, VCs are looking to understand, do you actually have the skills to do what this business is requiring? And secondly, what's your experience that makes you kind of, the person that is best placed to move this business forward and help my money ultimately multiply. But these ones at the bottom as well, through passion, 54% look for genuine enthusiasm and commitment. I think this is, this is so crucial. And how are you as a personality, how do you have that drive and how are you demonstrating that drive? So, if you're super quiet and you're not really doing a huge amount, if you've got a big challenge or a big market to try and tackle, you being silent is not going to send the right kind of signal to an investor that's like, well, that this is an area where I would say this person should be out there and doing as much as they can to raise that awareness. Similarly, teamwork. So, the ability to work collaboratively. Often, I think some of the best posts actually from founders are where they are, showing their leadership skills, but also that they've got really great team working around them. And, there's nothing more beneficial for team morale and building culture is if a founder is putting things out, but it also sends that amazing message to VCs that you also know how to bring in the right kind of people, and how to keep those people and how to manage those people and use those people to help that business grow. So again, really kind of thinking about those sort of audience traits that are really valued by your particular investor. Now, it might go even more granular than this. So you may have it where perhaps you've got a clean tech business. So you might need to think about like how you embody, the values that a clean tech business founder should embody. Do you have a vision and mission? What do you stand for personally? Thinking about those kind of things, if that matters to a clean tech or a sustainability VC, then ultimately those are the things that you need to try and evidence to them. So a lot of this is about building credibility. And, I think a lot of the mistakes that founders tend to make is that they tend to be storytellers, but there isn't really any kind of purpose behind what they're doing. So I think if founders look at the sort of centralized theme of trying to build themselves as being, truly credible, educate and inspire, then ultimately these things are going to sort of help stack in your favor. So I've listed out a few things here, commenting on sector trends and challenges. We tend to all get very inward focused on our own businesses. I am as guilty of this as anyone else. But show how impressive would you look if you're able to kind of look at something that's wider. And even if you're a tiny startup, even if you haven't really got a huge amount of traction yet, actually having a really good opinion or a viewpoint on something that's wider, because other people will be following those stories, and you being part of that just shows that you're part of that conversation early on, even before you launch. I think those are things that you should be doing, because they build community, they build that credibility, but also they're just sort of brilliant things to sort of get you noticed. One of the things that I wanted to sort of say here as well, and this is a big mistake that I'm seeing founders rely on actually, is the kind of the AI generated content. on, either within articles or within the posts that they put out. I think it's absolutely a brilliant tool, AI, to be able to kind of help you save some of that time. So we're talking about you being really time poor. You've got to be really efficient. However, what we're finding is that there's a real kind of general lack of defined opinion. You are the experts in what you're doing. You will have spent hours and hours researching, why your business is the thing that will, be the solving the challenge that particular industry needs. So I think try and use AI in a very hybrid way that ultimately allows you to still put that real opinion out there. Because if you can do that, I think certainly for the next foreseeable future, those will be the things that really differentiate you and will really impress. And of course, if you are putting something out there that's really interesting, you're going to generate that conversation. And again, you don't know who's watching those conversations when you're having them publicly. The other thing with building credibility, which is really helpful, is how do you leverage external factors to help you really kind of showcase your credibility. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, because obviously PR is part of that, but also, who in your network are you doing business with that you could use to sort of help you, help show you are an expert, an authority, and that you're mixing with the right kind of people. These things all really matter, because the strength of your network is directly correlated to how successful you could be at moving something forward for the business that you're running. Similarly, thinking about the right kind of signals that you're putting out, just as some ideas here, you're looking at creating a picture of yourself and your business that creates this feeling of FOMO. Like you want investors to be like, right, I'm hungry. This is interesting. I'm interested in the proposition. I think the team looks great. They've got a little bit of early traction. So many founders are not using some of the tools that they have and the good news and the wins that they have in their in what they're putting out. So testimonials are so valuable because it's other people validating you. But also, if you've had previous investment, working with your investors to see how you can kind of leverage their network and what you're doing from a communications perspective to sort of prove that you are the ones to watch. Momentum, milestones, team growth, new customers. So few people are properly promoting these things in the right kind of way. And it's because typically the startup journey is so fast paced. And when we see it, it's like, tick, I've got my first customer. Now I'm going to move on because I've got to build this bit of the tech and I've got to grow this bit of the team. Taking a moment to really think about how you can maximize those milestones and those bits of momentum, and where are the right channels for you to share those things. It might not always be PR. It might be that you have to do something on your blog. But then work out, like, how are you sharing those things? It's all about kind of creating that whole buzz and that sort of, again, that FOMO effect. If you can, create a feeling of scarcity. So, we might be closing around in 2 weeks. Once you can starting to see those buzz moments, or you've created those kind of campaigns of buzz, or, a little bit of extra traction, thinking about, how do you get the right kind of message out there that's sort of that, okay, I really want to get involved before it's too late. So I've talked a little bit about channels, and, I want to go back to the point that I made about having the right, putting the investment in the right kind of time and strategy. Just listing out a few of these things here. Most founders won't have time to be doing all of these things. Certainly not, at the beginning. You're in a great place if you're a founder that's, now at that point where you are driving the business forward. It is your brand that's moving things forward. And there are some bigger startups that you see that happening, or scale-ups in particular. But I think when you're setting a strategy for your founder's voice, really be meticulously looking at where are the best places for your target investors. So it might be LinkedIn, it might be that you know they're reading a particular newsletter, or they have a particular podcast that they're looking at. You really get to know those people and understand, you know, what it is that influences them. And then your tactics for your communication should align with those channels only. And if you've only got 15 minutes a week, great, pick the one thing that will pack the most impact. It might be a podcast. I mean, podcasts are great because you do a little bit of prep time, you do the recording, and then you've got so much material for you to go out with and use and repurpose, and marketing teams, if you have them, can use them. But it might also be that you have to just get a little bit more structured about your LinkedIn and your social strategy. And again, social media, it could be TikTok if you've got a consumer proposition. Or it could be, you know, maybe that won't work for you, but ultimately from an investor standpoint, I think LinkedIn is something that you need to be doing a little bit more of. And just to clarify on that, it should be your personal LinkedIn, not your brand's LinkedIn. We get a lot of questions about this, and there is definitely a place for both, but the engagement will happen on someone's personal LinkedIn over a brand platform. And again, it's you that you want the investors to be building trust in. The brand is a secondary thing, but ultimately they want to believe in you as people. So it's your profile that you're pushing. Leveraging your own network. Again, this is one of the things that I find businesses in general don't do a huge amount. And by the way, it's Pride Month, everybody, so happy Pride. So yeah, I mean, I think most businesses, even at early stage, will be aligning with more influential people that have a bigger presence than them. Whether it's investors, it might be that you're running a pilot with a bigger corporate. It might be that you're part of an accelerator. It could be that you've got office neighbors that are kind of, you know, a bit more advanced with you than you, like some of these co-working spaces, etc. You've got, you know, bigger companies right next door to teeny tiny ones. So thinking about you and your founder voice, how is it that you can potentially help your network to help you? You're judged by the company you keep, ultimately. And, you know, most of the time, we're so in a rush to get a big announcement out, or whether that's your own channels or whether you're doing something externally with media, but we haven't really thought about how the other people that really want to see you succeed could potentially help to you know, leverage that so for you. So it's as simple as sometimes, you know, writing a little bit of you know, a post and just saying to someone, would you mind, we're launching something next week, or we've got, you know, a really important milestone. Is there any way that you could help us share this? Or I put together a little bit of copy for you. I'd love it if you could put this on your LinkedIn, because it really matters to us what you think. And, you know, those sorts of things, especially in the beginning stages of running a startup, it's that kind of hustle and that mentality that I think you can see quite a lot of traction from, and it helps with that visibility for you as well. Owned channels. So I'm talking about your own, you know, websites that you run, and, or, you know, your own website. It could be your own blogs, or your own, you know, if you've got a Substack or a Medium, for example. Thinking when you're in the investment journey, thinking about, again, those signals that you're putting out, but make sure the strategy is specifically, again, for the audience that you're looking at attracting. So in this case, investors. One of the things that I am always amazed at with startups is that, you know, especially when they're going for their early rounds of investment, they've got a brilliant looking website, but there is no human face on that website whatsoever. So there is no meet the team, and it might be because you don't have a team yet, which is fine. But there's no about us page. There's nothing that kind of really shows the credibility of your founders. And I think, you know, getting your house in order, so that, let's just say you've sent an email to an investor, you've kind of piqued their interest. They want to now come to your website and have a look at things, and they can't find anything about you. you know, I think it's hard for them to determine whether or not they've got the right kind of the right kind of person that they want to work with. So make it easy for them, and make sure that what you're doing on your own channels has a regular cadence. So you're doing something regularly. It might only be once every week. That's fine. It might be once every other week, but just make sure that there is something that looks current and that you're active. And again, don't forget to engage with people that might be really interested in engaging with you on those channels. Finding ways to amplify. It's really hard when you're starting out. You might not have a massive community of people on your database, or lots of traffic to your website, or lots of followers on your LinkedIn page. But finding different ways to help you amplify. So I talked about kind of having, working with your network and seeing how they can help to build that network with the ways that you're putting the stuff that you're putting out there. But unless you're a kind of an influencer and you're in that lucky space where you come with a ready-made audience, you're kind of limited by what you can do. So posting regularly, putting something out regularly from yourself as a founder is the way to do that. But equally, this is also about working with external areas that will help you with that increased amplification. So earned media, that's, we're talking about PR here, influencers, if that's something that's right for your strategy or your, wider partners. The great thing about other people choosing to have your viewpoint or working with you, like media or journalists, etc., it shows that they have trust in you. It kind of almost validates that you are, pretty much an authority on what you're talking about. And you have to trust me about this, because when we come to work with new brands for the first time, we work really hard on helping the founder's bio really shine, because journalists won't reference or use people in their features if they don't feel like you've got, you don't really know what you're talking about. So by its very nature, being featured in a trade publication or in on a TV show or a podcast, those are really hard earned, and they do speak volumes. And again, it also says something to investors that you're prepared to really work hard and hustle. So you can do various different things with media, but I think the important thing is just don't ignore those external channels, because those are the things that will really amplify your voice. They'll help you build that community, and sends really nice signals to investors. So yeah, just a few things that you can do with media. And I'm certainly not saying, at the beginning, a lot of this you can actually do yourself. You don't necessarily need an agency. I mean, by all means, you can always ask people like myself to give you a few ideas on how and, when's the right time. And I do think that's really crucial. And it's why I particularly do work with accelerators, because I think it is like, there's a lot of minefields that you can go through with working with media, but ultimately they are your friend. And if you can work a way of harnessing the power that they have, you can pitch industry opinion pieces to them. So you just can't be you can't be self-promotional. You can't use it as a tactic to sort of talk about what you're working on. But when we're talking about showing you as an authority, an educator, someone that's inspiring, this is where media really comes in brilliantly. So you can offer commentary on wider industry stories, building like a network or a spreadsheet of journalists that you would consider your VIPs, and then really getting to know them, be helpful if there's something that you've seen that might be of interest. Those things genuinely can build you great relationships with journalists. And then the final one on here is that startups, when you do have news, make sure you really make the most of it. So I've seen heartbreaking things happen where, maybe you have landed your funding, or there's a big piece of news that will make a big difference to your investor conversations. and then you will go give it to one publication, and actually maybe you could have got 20, and that buzz would have been, again, amplified by 10 times if you'd have kind of thought about that strategy. So really think about how you share that news, and don't move on from it. Like, keep going back to it, keep being proud of it, and then I think those things will all really help you with that sort of moving things forward and kind of building yourself as that credibility in the eyes of founders. So I'm going to go on to doing some questions with you guys now, and hopefully this has been interesting. But I think one of the things I did want to just leave you with is that ultimately this kind of work is not just for investment. I think getting into the practice of the founder still having a voice within the company and knowing what it is that is appropriate and valuable for you to say will pay dividends to other areas as well. People will join you if they believe in you as a leader, and they understand your vision, and they really align with what you're trying to do. And I think this is incredibly important when you are really building a business, because sometimes you're asking for really big talent to join a company with very little track record. So actually, you being this forefront person that really is compelling and inspiring, can attract new talent. It can attract partners. It can also show credibility for you in the eyes of bigger customers that perhaps were a little bit nervous about working with startups. So really think about this, and your kind of ongoing strategy, so that it helps you with your investment goals, but ultimately also helps you with everything that the business is trying to achieve post investment. So I'm going to go on to doing some questions now. I hope that's useful. James, I feel there.
I am here. Fantastic. Thank you, Kirsty. Brilliant session. I knew it would be. So much great stuff. So many things I wanted to then have a conversation about, but I had to refrain because there's so much good stuff that you shared. Has anyone got any questions? There's nothing in the from what I can see, there's nothing in the chat. So does anyone have anything anything they want to ask? If not, I can think of something to kick off with, I'm sure. So Sarah, there we go. You've raised your hand. Do you want to unmute yourself and shout out the question?
Yes, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can.
Oh, great. Hi, Kirsty. Thanks for all that information. I heard through the grapevine that sometimes if you write a piece and you send it to some journalists and you say you can be the only one that publishes this piece, they're happy to, or they're happier if you were to say it doesn't have to be by and then our name or maybe one of our marketers' names. They can put their own name on it. Is that a way to help get the piece into press, or is that a myth?
I think that's a bit sneaky by journalists, to be honest, because if you're doing all the hard work, you're effectively giving them free labor. So no, I think there's a better tactic, actually. It's a good question. And actually the tactics of putting thought leadership through to journalists, you've got to think about this in sort of your most time efficient way. So what we typically do with Luminous is we would work with our clients and understand, what are the key messages and themes and potential articles actually that would be really interesting to the type of publication and the type of audience that you're trying to reach. Then what we do is we will create mini article synopses. So it's like a mini pitch. I always say PR is like sales. It is a sales effort ultimately, and except you're trying to sell stories to media or get them interested in what you're talking about. So if you've had those little synopses, your best approach to media is to say, hey, look, this is me, this is my bio, this is why I'm credible and why I'm an authority to talk about this. Would you like to, I'm happy to write this article as a byline article for you. Here's what it's going to cover. And really importantly, I appreciate it cannot be self-promotional about what I'm working on. But this is why I think it's relevant to your audiences. And then what they do is they will either go, yeah, great. Or they'll say, okay, I like this idea for an article. I'm not so sure on this one. Or they might say, this is interesting, but could you do it a bit more linked to something that's happening in the news at the moment? So they might tweak it. And what that does is it means you don't have to write an article until you've got an opportunity for it, which is great. That's a really, really, because no one's got time to do that. And what we find sometimes is when people start with us, they come with all these brilliant articles, and we're trying to then get something placed. And ultimately, it might not be the right style for the journalist. It might not be what's currently on their agenda to talk about. So pitching those synopsises again give you that kind of relationship building with the journalist, and it starts that dialogue to then give them what they want, and then ultimately give you what you want as well, which is some exposure.
That's great. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Amazing. Also, we've got a question from Madhu here as well in the chat, who says, how difficult would it be to kind of execute everything you've talked about today if you're a bit more introverted as a founder and maybe not so comfortable being that brand, that founder brand?
Do you know, this is such a great question, because, and I really resonate with this, because actually just sort of being able to do this session with you, I feel very nervous about doing this kind of thing. And it's not easy for some founders to do it. I think there's definitely some tactics, and I think you've got to working with someone on maybe helping you with a little bit of media training maybe, or something that kind of helps you feel a little bit more comfortable, because often I find that anxiety comes from not feeling massively prepared, or not really knowing if what you're doing is the right kind of thing. So having those sense checks so that, like, if I am going to be brave enough to post, I'm really, really comfortable that it's the right thing, and it's not going to get me into any trouble, and I feel it's going to, really help with the strategy. But equally, starting small, and starting with things that, perhaps are not big, bold opinions at the beginning, but just something that you feel proud of, or, because as I said in my deck, people are there to really want to help you. So I think it's about tactically trying things that are going to help you build that confidence. And then the other thing is you could work with someone to help you write some stuff, and then all you have to do is just be brave and click a button. So that's often.
And I'll jump in on this as well, because some of you who've known me for some time might be a little bit surprised to know that I was also an introverted founder, very introvert. I still am. I mean, I almost have this persona, almost like a secondary character that I see as like James Church, the author and the presenter, that isn't quite me in real life. To be honest, I'm like, I put me in a social setting, in a networking environment, and I'll be the one standing in the corner awkwardly looking at my shoes. Whereas but I've learned over the last 10 years of doing what I do and writing the book and having the content and getting feedback and positive feedback from people on my opinions and thoughts and processes. I've built this sort of confident kind of founder brand where I can comfortably now stand up in front of thousands of people and deliver a talk on a stage with the spotlights on. But 8 years ago, I'd have been absolutely petrified to stand up in front of a room of 5 people. And I think with every founder, you probably start in that what if, and maybe it's less about being introverted and more about kind of worrying what people will think of you if you stand up and voice your thoughts and opinions. And I think there is only one way to break through it, as you say, and that's to start small, start putting some content out there, being brave to put something small out and realizing, oh, people enjoyed
it's
that.
okay.
And then
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
okay. I didn't get this massive backlash. I haven't opened some big controversial door and I'm getting slated by a load of trolls. Actually, it's fine. And then you build that confidence over time. So I don't think anyone starts, very few founders start, I think, in a position where they just feel comfortable doing what we are now doing. You earn you convince yourself over time that actually you're capable of doing it. So
I
start small, and I think most people start feeling in this introverted way, and then even the
yeah
people you see, the Gary V's of the world, they probably all started in a position where they were a bit
yeah.
nervous, right?
I love the idea of almost like designing a persona. I mean, I'm not telling you to be kind of schizophrenic or anything like that, but I think, I definitely do it when Sometimes when I go in to pitch for new clients, or I do go do something really like scary for the first time, I love the idea of like playing a persona. I have a particular outfit that I wear that makes me feel a little bit braver, and almost, I think those things really help. So
It's
definitely start
a bit
small,
like
and
you
especially it does
almost
get
a performer.
easier.
I guess I see it as a performer, an
Mm,
alter ego. So it's a bit like a musician. You have the person, and then you have
mm,
Sting, the artist, or Bowie, and they're
mm,
personas of and you don't have to be as extravagant as that, but it sometimes it's good if you feel a bit of an introvert to detach yourself from the person that's up on stage or the persons that are putting the content out, the founder brand. I found that helpful anyway.
mm,
And the other thing that the best bit of advice I got on that was to rather than feel like you're making yourself famous and you're being the center of attention, which some people are scared off by, with this whole founder brand thing,
mm.
is to think about you shining a spotlight. You are the person shining a spotlight on a really meaningful cause, a really
Yeah,
meaningful problem that needs solving in the world. And all you're doing is pointing people in the direction of this thing you really care about. And then it becomes about this thing you care about, this thing you're passionate about, and not about you being kind of an egotistical maniac that's trying to become this famous founder like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, right? You're just shining people on a problem you care about. And that helps frame your thinking a little bit on this as well, I think.
yeah. That's exactly why I said that, moving it away from kind of personal branding, which I think
Mm,
is, I really don't like that term, to found a brand and actually impact mindset. So
yeah.
you're doing this for the good of your business, not for the good of yourself. And sometimes that helps, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone else has said about the recording. The recording will go up on YouTube in the next day or so. So keep an eye out on our YouTube channel for that.
I think we have a hand raised
Did
as
you have a
well.
hand up? Yeah, Nai, if I'm saying that right, Nie.
Yeah, it's me.
Nie.
Got a quick question for Kirsty, which is how do you deal with getting over that mental barrier? I mean, I realize it's an excuse, but it's that mental barrier of telling yourself, I don't see the clear, direct return on investment for doing this. Therefore, I'll just focus on engineering or product dev or one-on-one interactions because that's more easily measurable.
Yeah, it's and that is, I think, a really another good question, because this stuff is really hard to measure. But all I will tell you is that I don't think anyone that does this, and will not have some sort of understanding. I mean, I'll give you an example, understanding of the value. So, um, Amanda on my team, when she joined her role a few years ago, I'm very much I call myself a kingmaker, not a king. And she works with me on some of the marketing and brand stuff for Luminous, and she's been doing such a great job over the last few years about pushing my profile forward, but also doing the marketing for the business and making sure that that awareness. So there was one particular moment where, I think I put something out, which was it was actually a win that Luminous had had, but it was an opportunity for me to talk about, my history in the business, I think, and, some of the things I'd been doing. And out of the blue, someone that I had not spoken to in 10 months came out and bought a lead, which is now our biggest client and has been working with us for 2 years. And if I hadn't have posted that, and I appreciate every time you post, you're not necessarily going to get a win like that. But I definitely think there are all these things that all contribute to this building of your brand, and who you are. And I cannot tell you enough. I've heard it so many times. Investors are like, we're looking at the people. We're looking at saying, like, if I give you 10 million pounds of my money, am I going to get it back? And with something, and they need to really believe in you as a person. And if you're kind of, yeah, I think they will be looking at you, and unfortunately you can't measure how often they look at you, but then if you're completely silent and quiet, then I think that also speaks volumes.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's about building credibility and authority as much as
Mm.
it is about building new iterations of products. That stuff can also come later. Um, but if you want to raise funding, it's about credibility and authority. That's why my book is called Investable Entrepreneur and not Investable Business, because
Mm.
they invest in the entrepreneur. Anyone can have a great business idea. Loads of people can technically code a product. That's not the challenge. That's the easy part.
Mm.
Millions of people come up with ideas every day, but only a handful of them can turn those ideas into reality, and even fewer can turn that reality into scale.
Yeah.
Looking for that founder who they believe can turn that idea into reality and that reality into scale. So they're looking for the founder's credibility around not the product and the idea, but also the vision and the mission, but and the value proposition, but also the strategy, the business case, the commercial model, the how you're going to scale this both now and in the future. Your ability to build a business, not have an idea or code a product. So there's so much more layers to it that investors are looking for than just I've built a product and it works. And I've got, there's so much more depth to it. So your job as a founder, if you're raising, is to build credibility in all of these areas, both in the areas Kirsty talks about in terms of you as a personal brand, your personal founder, to be able to kind of talk about your experience and your ability to achieve things, but also the way you articulate your business case and all of those things beyond just the product dev. So yeah, it's a real layering exercise to build that credibility with investors and secure their capital in most cases.
Yeah, Emmanuel's got a question in the chat actually, about how to handle the case where your academic professional background doesn't match with
Mm.
industry that you intend to start up. How can I strategize to win investors' mind? Well, if it's a startup, I think this is interesting because I don't think you necessarily have to be a total expert in the industry at that point at the beginning, but you do have to show that you really know the industry. You do have to show that you've really researched it and that you understand both the market fit and the challenge that you're trying to solve. And that means that you're going to have to do some real digging and building up, your case. But I also think that thinking again about the kind of traits that people will want to see, investors will want to see in a founder. So, what's your resilience like? What's your ability to, have you run a business before? What are the kind of transferable things that will make you credible? It's a bit like applying for a job, I suppose, at the end of the day. Like if you match, hardly anyone matches the role profile absolutely exactly. So you have to kind of find ways of emphasizing where you have your credibility. It doesn't necessarily have to be in that particular industry. You don't have to have a 20-year career. But if you really understand and show that you understand that problem and you've thought cleverly and strategically about how you're going to help solve that challenge, that's a really good way to get you in at the
Yeah.
beginning.
I think, yeah, I agree. There's two things you can do. One is focus on you and your credibility. And what investors tell me is that they love investing in founders with unique insights into the market in which they operate. That doesn't mean that you need 20 years of experience, deep domain experience in that industry, but what it means is you've conducted research, both primary and secondary, that's given you a unique insight into an industry to solve the problem you've identified. So if you've got an academic background, you should be really good at that, right? You should be able to find those things, whether you've got industry experience or not. And the second thing, just to reassure investors that there's that knowledge base there, you could look at securing an advisor for a small amount of equity who does have 10, 20 years experience in the industry and has deep domain knowledge that you are saying are part of the team, and you're leveraging their insights as part of you developing the business case and the product. So we've got an article online about 4 different types of advisors you should have when starting your business, and that's one of them, right? That's having someone, if you haven't got that deep domain expertise yourself, find an advisor that has and bring them on board, and that will reassure investors. Okay, you've identified a market, you've identified these incredible insights. You don't have the industry experience yourself, but here's someone who does, that's part of your team, that you're leveraging their knowledge and background, and that's the winning formula, really.
You're also showing self-reflection and a solution to where you've seen your gaps. So I think that's also a really good trait, and a really good skill. I mean, anyone that's a major ego that they can think they can do it all is, I think, probably
Yeah.
going to end up coming
I mean,
unstuck.
entrepreneurship's a team sport, right? You should
Yeah,
be able to
absolutely.
identify your gaps and bring in people around you that fill those gaps. So not knowing everything right now is fine as long as you're self-aware and can talk to investors about you need to build knowledge in these areas. think you're going to be good. Now, Kirsty, if you've got time, there is one last question from Noah, but he's had to drop, and he's going to look at the recording later,
Okay.
I think. And that's more about when it comes to international exposure. Is there anything different? I know Noah is a client of ours, and I know that um, it's a UK based business, but he's got an opportunity to launch this in India so I think he's referring to the fact that he needs to build this founder brand, but his core market initially, his core launch market is going to be over in, I think, India or Asia somewhere.
Yeah, so international comms, I think the own stuff is easier. So you've got to really think about, how do you present yourself as being actually knowledgeable about the market. So your comms strategy should be really, often clients come to us and they have a kind of one narrative that is a bit kind of a global opportunity, and this is where they fit into that. But you're going to have to get a little bit more granular, I think, with the Indian opportunity. So if you're wanting to put things out into either posts for LinkedIn or work with media, you've got to show, number one, like how are you making an impact in that market, or how will you make an impact in that particular market? What do you know about India and the customers in India that you will be working with? And then again, making sure that you are that what you're putting on your website also shows you as being a business that's accessible to anybody that you're working with in India. I think thinking about it specifically from an investor perspective, yeah, you might want to be doing a little bit more due diligence on what Indian investors specifically are looking at. What are the trends there? But I think, again, as we've talked about, building that story regionally and making sure that you really know everything about the market that you're moving in. But just think about timing as well with this, especially with PR. Often we get clients coming to us and saying, right, we're doing pretty well here in the UK, but we've got a big opportunity in the US. We'd like to launch in the US now, and they've got no case studies. They haven't really thought about any data or any research that they're bringing anything new. They've got no clients, and they haven't got an office, so it might not be that is the right time for them. So think tactically what the business can do to get them in the right position to be doing comms in that market. But as I said, the owned channels are a bit easier because you can start to put some intention on, like, this is the opportunity in India, this is what we join this group of startups or people that are doing the same kind of thing, and start to sort of leverage some friends. I think in that network is probably the best way of doing some of those things. You're on mute, James.
I'm on mute. Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Kirsty. That's really, really great advice. We'll leave it there because we've gone way over the 45 minutes I think we had booked out for this for this session. But we've had so many great questions and everything. So it's been great. Thank you everyone for being with us. I know our next event will be published soon. I think in a month or so's time. We've got Legal Vision coming to talk about some of the more legal sides and legal aspects of fundraising and setting up your business. So if you want some insights from Legal Vision, they're a really incredible and company, massive team. So they've got huge amounts of insight and data to share. So come along to that one. Keep an eye out on your inbox. We'll be promoting that one probably in the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that, and hopefully see you on the next event. But otherwise, thank you very much, Kirsty, for being with us and sharing your incredible knowledge today. And I hope everyone got as much value from it as I did. So thank you very much, and everyone else, see you all very soon. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you.